Hello, my name is Ryan Bailey. I am a physician and executive coach, and this webinar is on physician coaching, what it is, how to use it, who's using it, and how to find coaching resources. First, I want to say thank you to all of you who are joining me today, whether you are watching this live or as a replay. And if you are watching this as a replay, please feel free to reach out to me afterwards with any comments or questions. I will provide my contact information at the end on the last slide. So let's go ahead and get started. Why am I giving this webinar to begin with? In my work, I speak nationally, give workshops to physician groups and academic departments. I help organizations create coaching resources, and I coach individual physicians. And in all of those contexts, I am constantly asked a few basic questions. First, what is coaching? Second, I'm often asked how it's being used for physicians specifically, and by who. And third, I'm often asked, how do you find coaches? How do you find coaches who are not only great at coaching, but also have the experience and specialized knowledge needed to coach physicians? And I'm asked these three questions so often that I created this brief webinar. So let's start with that first question. What is coaching? It's a very valid question. And one of the things that I've noticed over time is that there is a wide range of familiarity with coaching among people in healthcare. And I'm assuming that wide range of familiarity is similar for those of you who are watching now. Some of you may be very familiar with coaching. You may already use coaching resources in your organization, or you may have worked with a coach yourself, and that's great. But I also realize that some of you are simply coaching curious. You may have heard of coaching and know that it's used extensively in highly educated professions like business and law, and is rapidly gaining traction in medicine, but you may not really know what it is or how coaching differs from other resources like mentoring or consulting. So let's start by answering this very basic question so that we are all on the same page. There are many different definitions of coaching out there. One of the reasons it's difficult to reach a consensus on the definition is because coaching is used by so many professionals in so many different contexts. But a good place to start is here. This is the International Coach Federation's definition. And I'm not going to read it to you, but I will point out that this definition does a good job of highlighting the two core processes that all coaches work on. First, coaches are trying to help physicians and healthcare leaders gain insight and self-awareness into how they experience life and working in the world. This is really about guiding physicians on an introspective process to help them better understand strengths, values, purpose, as well as their weaknesses and blind spots, so that they can understand where they are thriving and where they are stuck, and most importantly, why. And a large part of this process is helping physicians and leaders gain insight into the strategies that they use for rising up to challenges, getting their needs met, or coping with stressors. The second thing that coaches are always trying to do is help physicians then translate this new insight and self-awareness into action to affect improvement. Once physicians have this deeper self-awareness and have clarity around strengths, goals, purpose, they can start to make changes to their environment, as well as start developing the new behaviors and approaches that will allow them to accomplish their goals and find greater vitality. Perhaps the best way I've heard of these two facets of coaching described in two simple words is mindfulness and effectiveness. Helping clients develop mindfulness and objectivity about how they experience their life and work, as well as mindfulness around what their best selves looks like and where they want to be in their lives, in their professional and personal pursuits. And then using that mindfulness in service of greater efficacy in taking action and creating positive changes in their experience. So, coaching is clearly about growth and self development, with an emphasis on taking action and making the changes needed to have greater purpose, meaning, and vitality in whatever area of life the client is working on. So, with this idea in mind, the next question most people ask is, well, how is this different from other resources out there, like therapy or consulting, for example? And I think this chart is extremely helpful. While there is some overlap, there are key differences. Compare coaching with therapy in terms of focus, for example. Therapy tends to be focused on healing the past, helping someone move from dysfunctional to functional by changing patterns of behavior or finding emotional resolution with issues. Coaching, in contrast, is very future focused. Coaching cares less about how you got here and more about where do you want to go. Coaching also recognizes that while many people are functional, they may not be optimal. They may not be living as their best selves. Coaching is thus a process to help physicians identify and achieve a better future state in whatever area of their life they want to focus on, professional or personal. Therapy is about healing the past, whereas coaching is more about future growth. There are also differences in the way coaches interact with their clients. For example, both coaching and consulting can be used to solve problems in areas where one is stuck, like burnout. But in consulting, the consultant leads from the front, meaning the consultant is expected to generate advice, new knowledge, and solutions, and provide those to the client. In contrast, a coach leads from behind. The coach uses tools like inquiry and facilitates experiential learning to help the client, the physician, generate their own insights and solutions to their challenges. And in this respect, coaching shares some similarity with therapy, as a therapist will sometimes use inquiry to prompt insight in the client. But therapists also may sometimes lead from the front, giving their interpretation and advice. Last, I will point out that the goals or successful outcomes also vary between coaching, consulting, and therapy. In coaching, the outcome sought is when a client has a renewed sense of purpose, clearly defined goals, and a vision for where and how they want to change in their life. And they are taking tangible action steps towards that vision. In consulting, a successful outcome is when opinion and recommendations have been rendered by the consultant after performing their own analysis for the client. And in therapy, success is often defined as emotional resolution and a return to normal function. So that now that we know what coaching is and the approach used, how is coaching being specifically used in medicine? Most coaching falls into three categories: fulfillment, interpersonal skills development, and performance and leadership. When we think of fulfillment coaching in medicine, most of us think about burnout and loss of engagement. And coaching, with its focus on connecting with purpose, vision, And creating new goals is a very effective tool for helping physicians find ways to re-engage with their work, change how they experience their work, and learn to enjoy medicine again, despite the incredible daily challenges and distractions. A lot of physicians also use coaches to overcome boredom. And I would argue boredom is even more of an epidemic in medicine than burnout. And a lot of what we label as burnout is really boredom. Physicians tend to be lifelong learners. They love to grow and be challenged, which is likely one of the reasons they chose the rigors of medical training in the first place. But once training is over, medicine can become very rote and unchallenging. And physicians will burn out from boredom if they don't engage in a process to help them start growing again. Now, whether it's burnout or boredom, moving past these challenges involves some kind of change to create more fulfillment. So physicians will work with a coach to job craft, which means finding opportunities to customize their current work, maybe by changing how they work at work, changing how they think about their work, changing their focus, patient population, or changing how they interact with others and the skills they use to manage stress. Sometimes they may use a coach to develop a portfolio career where clinical medicine is only part of what they do. And they develop other interests in research, administration, or education. Or they may use a coach to transition completely out of medicine. A second major area of coaching is interpersonal skills, things like emotional intelligence, interpersonal communication, conflict resolution. The research clearly shows that these skills, and not knowledge or technical skill, are the primary determinants of success in mid to late careers for all professionals. In medicine specifically, the research shows that these skills are the primary drivers of malpractice, patient satisfaction, and patient compliance. These skills also affect provider burnout, not just in oneself, but they affect the level of burnout in those who work with you. And these individual skills often make or break a group's ability to cohesively act as a team. And these are skills that cannot be taught didactically. They have to first be taught through a process of introspection and self-awareness, and then solidified through a structured process of facilitated experiential learning, which is exactly what coaching is. The third major area that coaching is being used in medicine is in performance and leadership coaching. And this most closely resembles what people traditionally think of with executive coaching, helping high performers become more efficient and efficacious, more productive with less stress, helping leaders create a vision, and helping them learn how to inspire those around them to follow that vision. It also involves helping physician business owners create more efficiency and value in their practice. Now, in terms of who is hiring coaches in these three areas, it varies depending on the area we're discussing. So with fulfillment, for example, most physicians seeking this type of coaching are self-referring. They see coaching as an important professional investment in improving how they experience their work for years to come. In terms of organizations, you can imagine it is very cost and time prohibitive to hire individual external coaches for everyone in a group, for example. But what we do see in this category is organizations hiring coaches to address fulfillment using other strategies. So one strategy, for example, is to bring coaches in to do group work, like a workshop or professional development day with coaching exercises. For example, I do focused, evidence-based workshops to improve a group's cohesion and internal dynamics, which reduces burnout. And something like that is done in a half day or full day workshop, for example. We also see organizations creating internal peer coaching programs. A group of internal physicians will volunteer to be taught basic coaching skills, and a coach like me would be brought in to teach these skills and provide a structure for the program. And some basic but very effective skills and concepts can be taught with a relatively small number of hours of workshops for the volunteer coaches. And these coaches will then use these skills and meet with other attendings, residents, or medical students in coaching sessions 3 to 6 times a year for an hour each. And the data shows this works in terms of increasing engagement and reducing burnout, not just for the coaches, but also, or not just for the coachees, but also for the coaches themselves. It's a double win. Now, for the second category, interpersonal skills, there tends to be little self-referral. Most of these physicians are referred as the result of being identified by the organization as lacking in some area. They may be outliers in terms of press ganey, malpractice, or patient complaints. And organizations who know about coaching will sometimes directly refer. But what most often happens is organizations don't know what to do and refer these physicians to state physician health programs. And many state programs now use coaches in addition to their traditional resources of psychologists and psychiatrists, and will refer to coaches when appropriate. For example, I am a referral coach for multiple state physician health programs, and I work with a fair number of my clients in this way. In regards to the last category, performance and leadership, it's about half self-referral and half organizational referral. Many physicians who own their own practices or are promoted to leadership roles will seek the help of a coach to overcome the many challenges inherent in these roles and gain needed skills not taught in medical training. At the same time, many organizations now hire coaches, both retroactively and proactively, for physicians promoted to leadership roles, because they realize that without guidance, most physicians fail in these leadership roles. So, for example, I am sometimes hired to start working with a physician a few months before they start their new role. And during that time, we would develop a clear vision for the type of leader they want to be, what strengths they already have and can leverage, and what challenges may exist, and what skills they may need to develop. And then I continue to work with them for 6 to 12 months as they step into their new role and practice these skills. So I hope this first section has given you a good sense of what coaches do and how that differs from other resources, and how coaching is currently being used within medicine and healthcare. So that brings us to the second part, which is, how do we find and vet coaching resources? Well, how do we find anything these days? We start with Google. What's interesting is if you type in executive or business coaching, you get over 25 million hits and pages upon pages of coaching websites. Whereas with physician coaching, you get less than 10 million hits, and very quickly, within the first couple pages, you get off topic. Also, many coaches, physician coaches, coach under their names as independent practitioners rather than work for an organization. And because of the way Google algorithms work, websites for individuals tend to have less pages and less complexity, and so they don't rank as high. And so most well-known physician coaches won't even come up in these first few pages. So Google is actually not a very efficient way to find many physician coaches or other resources. Luckily, there are alternative ways. One is to contact institutions that already use coaches. Many state medical societies, medical boards, and state physician health programs already use coaches as a resource. And so this is a great place to start, as many of them maintain lists. In fact, in the last 6 months, I contacted every medical board, state medical society, and state physician health program and looked at all of their websites to see if they were addressing burnout and what resources they were using. And there's wide variation. Some states don't address physician wellness at all beyond addiction, for example. In contrast, some are very proactive about fulfillment, burnout, and using a wide range of resources, including coaching. So I mention this because keep in mind, most coaching is done by phone or Skype. Therefore, coaches are not limited by geography. So if your state organizations happen to not yet be using coaches, just look at other states' resources until you find what you need, as geography is irrelevant in most of these coaching scenarios. Also, be aware many of the lists of coaches are not published on their websites, although they will provide them if you email them or directly call them. Another great way to find coaches is to read about physician wellness. This is effective for two reasons. First, most professional coaches write extensively to get their name out there. And most of these articles appear in profession-specific blogs like Kevin MD, Student Doctor Network, Physician on Fire. Second, many mainstream news sources now write about physician wellness frequently and the crisis facing our profession. And they tend to do a good job of finding coaches to interview. I get asked all the time to comment on stories. New York Times, Huffington Post are good places to start. A third way to find coaches is professional meetings. Most state medical societies and specialty groups have annual meetings, and many of these conferences have a wellness track. And inevitably, they have coaches who lead breakout sessions or give keynotes. Non-clinical conferences can be useful too. Because this topic is so relevant to leaders, administrators, C-suite executives in healthcare, you will find a lot of lecturing on wellness and burnout at trade conferences for these groups. And thus, you will find coaches there as well. Also, conferences like Seek are a great place to look. For those of you not familiar, Seek is the largest national conference for physicians looking to change their careers and develop non-clinical trajectories. And remember, you don't have to attend these conferences. Just read the agenda of the most recent conference for the group you are looking at and see who spoke, who did the breakout sessions, and you will generally find many coaches. So if you do all of this, you will find coaches. The question is, how do you then know if they're any good? In medicine, we are so used to credentialism. It's all about how many letters do you have after your name and how long did it take for you to get them. And we rely on these letters, knowing that there are organizations behind them ensuring competency. But most professions are not like this, at least not to the degree that medicine is. And that is certainly true of coaching. There are no legal requirements to call oneself a coach. And the only state I know of that makes any attempt at regulation is Washington State. And they simply require coaches and consultants to self-declare and pay a registration fee. There's no actual vetting. So I'm going to discuss all the ways you could consider vetting a coach and try to rank them, but by what I think is most reliable. So first, where and how did they train? As I said, there are no legal requirements to be a coach. but I think that training is an absolute bare minimum for vetting. And fortunately, the International Coach Federation accredits training programs. It's perhaps one of the most important things that they do within the profession. And their accreditation requires a minimum number of didactic and observed coaching hours. The ICF audits these programs, and many of the more well-reputed programs actually train well over these minimum requirements. Often we're talking 250 to 300 hours of training, taking over a year to do, with a lot of active and observed coaching. At last count, there were 132 of these accredited programs, which the ICF refers to as ACTPs, Accredited Coach Training Programs. And I mention a few programs here at the bottom so that you have a sense of the big names in the field. These programs are some of the oldest and most reputed ones, and they account for many of the coaches working professionally today. The first is IPEC, Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. And in full disclosure, this is the program that I attended. Another huge name in the field is CTI, Coach Training Institute. Coach University is also well known, as is the Hudson Institute in California. I would also like to mention that the coach training market is getting more complex. Universities have finally caught on to the huge demand for training in this skill set. And so now you see big name universities like Harvard and Columbia starting to have programs. Some of these are freestanding, and some of these are tracks integrated into other degrees, like a coaching track within an MBA program. And I am sure these programs are great, but they are very new and have relatively little track record as of yet. For the moment, if you ask experts in the field of coaching what the most reputed programs are, they remain the non-academic companies like the ones I mentioned on the previous page. And I am sure this will change quickly over time, however, as coaching becomes more academic and there's more money behind research into coaching. So once you've established someone is properly trained, I think there are 6 things you can consider looking at to try to vet someone. First is referrals, testimonials. I think this is the best possible vetting. The point of coaching is to help physicians improve their experience of their lives and their work. And nothing beats a great referral. It is de facto proof that the coach can do the work. The second way you can vet coaches is by their experience. How long have they been doing this? And this is a little more complicated to judge than it might first appear, but can be useful. First, do you look at hours, total number of clients, years in practice? Most of us within the coaching field tend to focus on hours of paid coaching. But regardless of which of these you choose, how do you say how much experience is enough? Anecdotally, a lot of coaches argue that it takes a couple hundred hours of coaching beyond training to feel comfortable and proficient. But there are no hard and fast cutoffs. Also, how do you confirm the hours coached beyond simply asking the coach? I will mention that the ICF also provides longevity credentials, and these are known as ACC, PCC, MCC, which stand for Associate Certified Coach, Professional Certified Coach, and Master Certified Coach. But these credentials, to be honest, are not commonly pursued. There are many many coaches in the field who meet the hours requirement for these credentials, but choose not to pursue them because, quite frankly, not a lot of people are aware of these credentials. And it's not useful for most coaches to go through the effort of getting them. A third way you could vet coaches is ask if they work full or part-time. Is coaching their primary profession or a side interest? If they work full time, that says something about their ability to maintain a client base and get business. But just because they coach part time does not mean that they are not great coaches. Many physician coaches do not coach full time. And that has a lot to do with the income disparity between coaching and being a physician. It takes a long time to build a full time coaching business, and it's very hard to get back to the income level most physicians experienced while they were working clinically. And so many physicians transition slowly over years from clinical practice to working as a coach. Fourth, do they speak, write, or otherwise active in physician development? These things are a good indicator of experience and commitment. Does the coach attend conferences, speak at medical society meetings? Do they work with their physician health program in their local state? Do they give grand rounds? Do they write on these topics? Have they ever taught courses or designed group interventions in coaching for organizations? All of these are indicators that they know their stuff. They indicate a level of mastery. And number 5, are they a physician? And this is something that's often asked in coaching in general. Does a coach need to have worked professionally in the area that they are coaching to be an effective coach? On one hand, coaching skills are transferable and broadly applicable. But in law, business, finance, the general consensus is that coaches also have to be experienced in the field that they coach. In particular, the culture of medicine is so unique. The verbiage, the expected behaviors, the hidden curriculum of medical training, and understanding these are crucial to a coach's ability to help and understand their physician client or the healthcare leader that they're working with. I have also found that physicians are highly unwilling to speak with an outsider. The best way I've ever heard it phrased is they want to know that the person that they are talking to knows what betadine smells like, right? Either you're in medicine and you know that smell or you don't. It really comes down to an issue of credibility and coaching alliance, which is so important in the coaching relationship. So, does a coach need to be a physician to coach physicians? Maybe, maybe not. But it's also an issue of credibility and acceptance in the physician client's eyes. And number 6, the last thing I will mention in terms of vetting a coach is do an introductory session with that coach. Most coaches offer free or reduced cost sessions. They may offer complimentary sessions that tend to be very brief to assess what the goals and structure of coaching might be. Some coaches offer full sessions as an initial session at a reduced fee, and these tend to be actual coaching sessions. Both can be helpful because so much of coaching is about fit and feel. Despite having accredited training, there are so many different styles of coaching and structures that coaches use. And there's a lot to be said for talking with a coach and getting that feel. So I hope this list is helpful in terms of organizing and weighing all the ways that you could vet a coach. It's not clear cut, and you could choose to weigh these items in different ways, but this is meant to give you the knowledge to at least know where to start. At a minimum, a coach should be professionally trained through an accredited program. And then beyond that, there are ways to try to judge experience. But ultimately, fit and style are very important as well. And often the only way to glean that is to speak to the coach in an initial session. I hope you have enjoyed this webinar overall. and now have a good sense of coaching, its uses in medicine, and how to find effective coaches. And please feel free to stay on and ask questions or contact me if you are watching the replay. In addition to individual coaching for physician fulfillment and leadership development, I do focused evidence-based workshops for groups to increase cohesion and engagement and reduce burnout. I also help organizations develop coaching resources, and I speak nationally on all of these topics. So please feel free to reach out or forward my name if there is any way I can be service of you or to someone you know. And with that, I will open it up to questions if there are any. Thank you.